story time with me, Mrs. Miller. Today we're going to be reading a story called Mrs. Mcnosh and the Great Big Squash. Oh my gosh. That rhymed. I picked this story today because I thought it was silly and because I thought it was a really good example of a good story. Lots of different events happen in this story. There's a lot of things that happen at the beginning, there's some stuff that happens in the middle, and then there's something that happens at the end. So I thought this was a really good story for us to read this week so that we can pay attention to what's happening at the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then later this week, maybe you'll decide to write your own story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So as I'm reading Mrs. Mcnosh and the Great Big Squash today, I want you to think about what are the important things that happened at the beginning in our story? What are some of the important things that happen in the middle of our story? And then how does it all come together in the end? Okay, are you ready? Now this is a rhyming book. So as I'm reading, maybe you also want to try to predict what the rhyming word is going to be at the end of every sentence. That's a fun way to read these stories. Okay, are you ready? Here we go. Mrs. Mcnosh and the Great Big Squash. The first day of spring, Mrs. Melly Mcnosh went out to her garden and planted a squash. She sure did. She pushed the seed in with the tip of her toe, and the minute she did it, it started to grow. That's right. Oh man, it started to grow right away. At first it was round and as big as a head. In fact, it looked just like the paper boy, Fred. I think that's Fred. Oh man, look at it. Then it turned yellow and bumpy and fat. It rolled from the garden and flattened the cat. Oh my gosh. Oh no. It's rolling away. It knocked over trash cans and ran over toes. It twisted the sprinkler and plugged up the hose. It crashed through the clothesline and smashed through the fence, scaring the pants off two elderly gents. Oh no, look at them. That's so silly. Poor Nellie was worried. She said, "Oh my gosh, there's got to be some way to slow down this squash." She slapped it and scolded it, pinched it and kicked it, and then she took hold of its stem and she picked it. Well, see that there? She picked it. I wonder if that will help it stop growing. Now what do I do? Wondered Mrs. Mcnosh. I've got to find something to do with this squash. There isn't a place in the world it will fit. It's as big as a house. Wait, said Nellie. That's it. And so, by the light of a big yellow moon, she scooped and she scraped with a long-handled spoon. And when the sun rose, where was Mrs. Mcnosh? Curled up sound asleep in her big yellow squash. Now, isn't that a silly story? I hope you enjoyed hearing that story with me. I like that one. Now what I'd like you to go do is create a story map about this story. There's some resources for you in your OneNote. I want you to talk about who was in our story, the characters. Where did our story take place? That's the setting, right? And what are the things that happened in our story? What happened first? What happened in the middle? And then what did Mrs. Mcnosh do in the end? Okay? Watch it again. Hear it again if you need to. I hope you join me again for our next story. Okay? Have a great day. Happy reading. Bye.